What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Juicy Jet podcast. This is a place where you can learn a little bit more about your favorite team. I could talk a little bit about some of my experiences as a world traveling Jets fan, and then hopefully build a little community out of it. I'm your host, Kevin Rooney, and we have a massive episode today. I have no idea how long this is going to take, I'm not sure, but not only is it one of my favorite topics to talk about when it comes to the Jets, which is free agency, but I have my first ever guest joining the Juicy Jet podcast. Matt Dunn is here joining me. Matt is one of my college roommates. We've been best friends for a long time. Matt, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks for having me on, Kev. I'm doing great. Favorite time of the year is coming up. Free agency, always a fun time. Usually better than what we put on the field. So we'll have a little bit of excitement over the next couple of weeks.
That's the problem is this becomes the most fun time of the year for us because during the actual season it's miserable and we're trying to win a 14th straight offseason. So we're going to walk in, try to fix the Jets today with their offseason plans. But before we do that, Matt, maybe you tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Tell us about how you became a Jets fan so we have some background on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I am from Long Island originally, and I kind of grew up being a Jets fan. I think what really accelerated me into the next level of super fan was going to college in Boston with Kevin and a couple of our other friends who were also Jets fans. Just made me want to dig my heels in a little bit more, being in enemy Pats territory. Happened to be a great time, 2010, beating the Pats in the playoffs. A lot of sorry faces up there. So been a massive Jets fan ever since.
Yeah, that started the downfall. We had the greatest win, we're probably the second greatest win in our team's history, beating the Pats in the divisional round of the playoffs, and we have come nowhere close since. So it's been sad. Um, but before we get going, Matt, why don't you tell me a little bit about? Obviously, we hired a new head coach, new general manager in Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji. What do you think? Let's start with Aaron Glenn because he seems to be the one in the power position. Did you like the hire? Is he the one that you wanted from the beginning? What do you think?
No, honestly, not necessarily. Not to say that he's not going to be a good hire. I think he is actually going to be a good hire. I think when it came to it, typically the stereotype of the Jets coach has been hiring a first time defensive coordinator. And we've done that 4 of the last 5 times dating back to the 2000s. I was just looking for them to do something a little bit different, break the mold, bring in a guy like a Mike Vrabel, not necessarily a Ben Johnson, because I wasn't always too high on him. And I don't want to go chasing a guy just with an offensive background just for the sake of it. But I was just looking for them to do a little something different. We were always looking to add some veteran leadership, and I know he's made some really good additions to his staff. But I was looking for something a little bit more. Look, I think he's going to be a really good head coach, hopefully. Um, but I was definitely looking for something a little bit different.
Yeah, I think Vrabel was my number one guy too. I wanted someone with experience, but he was really the only one that like stood out in terms of had good experience. Like I wasn't gonna hire Rex Ryan. I wasn't gonna hire like some of those retreads who weren't even successful in the first place. I think out of the new folks, obviously there was Ben Johnson who was never coming here, and then you got Aaron Glenn who actually wants to be the Jets head coach. So all we can do is cheer for him at this point. But I've liked the hire so far. I've liked the way that he's worked with the media. He's very direct. So it's been interesting to see. What about Darren Muji? What do you think of him?
So far, early indications are good. A lot of the beat reporters are saying positive things about him, including his interactions with agents at the combine. He's one of the guys that when they released the list of the GM candidates, I hadn't even heard of more than half of them, to be honest with you. So he's kind of the less experienced one, but I'm hopeful. And I think that the interesting thing is they seem to have a really good relationship, and I know that's been an issue that's plagued the Jets in the past. So hopefully these guys are starting out on the right foot and can really build something special here.
We'll see. That's a risky one. He's like 39 years old. He's super young. He's only worked for the Broncos, so we'll see how that one goes. But you're right. We don't really know about these folks. We're not behind the scenes, so no one has any idea what they're going to be like. Um, but just like me and you, he's like 6'6", and I'm like 210. You're probably what 195. So I think it.
Yeah.
I think it's nice to have a little bit of dominance there. It's actually funny watching him stand next to Aaron Glenn, where Aaron Glenn's like 5'9" and he's like 6'6". It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito in that movie Brothers from the 90s. It's
Exactly.
amazing.
All right, Matt. Before we get into, we're gonna play. We're gonna play a little stay or go with the New York Jets internal free agents, and then we're gonna hop over to the external free agents. But before we do that, I got a couple things that I want to mention. Number one, as you can see on the noggin right now, we got a Juicy Jet hat. Shout out to my brother and his girlfriend, Brian and Amelia, for actually getting me some hats for my birthday. So we got a green one and we got a white one, which is the one I'm wearing right now. So very exciting. If anyone wants a hat, I've got like 20 of them. I'm not selling them. You can have them for free. So let me know and I will send them your way. But very excited about my new Juicy Jet hats. It's amazing. Who knows what's next? Maybe we'll do t-shirts. Maybe we'll do koozies. Who knows? But that's number one. Number two, Matt, I got a trivia question for you. So I got this like little Jets calendar thing. So every day it's like a different trivia question. I'm not going to have you answer it right now. I'm going to have you answer it at the end of the show because I want to give people a chance to think about it. But the question is, what NFC team did the New York Jets beat on the road in 2022? Which NFC team did the New York Jets beat on the road in 2022? So, Matt, I will come back to you a little bit later with the answer to that one. And if you remember the score or any significant plays from it, maybe we'll talk about it. Cool?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's dive into a little bit of stay or go. So I got a list pulled up of all of the Jets' internal free agents. Obviously, there are two that we've re-signed already with both Xavier Newman and Irv Charles. They're back. Xavier Newman, depth center. He could play guard too. Not a big deal. It's pretty cheap. Irv Charles is interesting because he's a wide receiver, but technically not. He's a gunner by trade, and he's going to be coming off an ACL injury, so we'll see if he actually plays. But he's probably going to contribute nothing in the wide receiver room. So those are the two we've gotten back already. We've obviously cut a few people, and maybe I'll start with this. What did you think of? I guess as of Wednesday, we'll officially release Aaron Rodgers. What did you think of that move?
I was a fan of the move. I think they needed a reset. Aaron Glenn, he's the sheriff in town. There's only room for one Aaron, and Glenn's the guy. Especially if you look at the cap implications. If he played one more year, I forget the number, but they would have taken a crazy cap charge. So look, I want to win. He obviously presented the best chance to win in 2025. But I think if you take a long-term view, I think that the team made the right decision.
Okay. I'm a little bit the opposite. I love Aaron. I felt like he gave us the best chance to win, and I want to win. I don't want another 4 in whatever season. So it's going to be interesting, especially when we go through these external free agents, what our quarterback plan is going to be. And then number 2, Devontae Adams. What'd you think of that one?
That was a tougher one. I think he's still one of the top wide receivers in the game now, but I understand he's kind of on the back end of his career, even though he's still amazing. He wants to play for a contender. He wants to play with his buddy Aaron Rodgers. So I completely understand where that one came from, as much as I would have loved to have kept him.
Yeah. When you look at the wide receiver room, it's barren right now, which really stinks. He was awesome. I loved watching him, but I'd rather have Garrett. Like, if that was the choice we had to make between Garrett and Devontae, you're taking Garrett. He's younger. He's got limitless potential at this point. So, yeah, sad. He was great for us for, 11 games, 800 yards, 7 touchdowns, something like that.
We'll always have the Jags game.
We'll always have the Jags game, and it was awesome. All right, so aside from that, let's go into stay or go. Now, just to preface, me and Matt are fans. We are not going to dive into the dollar values of all of these folks, how much they're going to cost. The good news is, by releasing both Devontae and Aaron, we have about $53 million in cap space, which is top 10 in the league, which is kind of crazy to think about with all these folks we've been paying. But I'm going to rip through some people. You tell me if you want them to stay or go, and you can explain if you want to as well.
Okay.
All right, everybody's favorite New York Jet, Hassan Reddick.
See you later, pal.
Gone. Love it. What a horrible teammate. What a horrible move that was.
Probably one of the worst moves of the Joe Douglas era.
Oh, yeah.
Gutting the defensive line to trade for him. Terrible.
Disaster. Yeah. DJ Reed.
Go. I think we have some intriguing young guys. I want to see Brandon Eccles a little bit more in the spotlight. I want to see Quantez Stiggers a little bit more in the spotlight. So he's been a great Jet. He's been a great leader for this team, but I think it's time for both sides to move on. Yeah,
you just said that Hassan Reddick was probably Joe Douglas's worst move. I think DJ Reed was probably his best free agent signing. Probably one of the better ones we've ever had, to be totally honest with you. But he's getting a little older. He's small. This is probably his last big payday. So unfortunately, DJ Reed's got to go. And he's mentioned it. He mentioned it at the end of the season that he was leaving. So he's out the door. You actually mentioned Brandon Eccles. He is also a free agent. So I'm assuming you want him back.
I want him back. Absolutely. Yeah, I think he's. I mean, if we could just play the Dolphins every game, he'd be an All-Pro cornerback. So, no, I want him back. I think he's been really good in limited action, and I want to see what he can do more in a starting role.
He's the Tua killer. I love it.
Hmm.
All right, cool. Javon Kinlaw,
Go, go. Massive disappointment.
massive,
Way overpaid.
massive disappointment. Yep. Go back with Salah. Go to Ulbrich. See ya.
Yep.
This is an interesting one. Tyler Conklin.
I say stay. I want him back. I think he's really underrated just around the league. I think he's a good locker room guy. I think he's got solid hands. He's had some really good games. I want him back.
Yeah. I think he's a good number two. I think we got to find a better option as the number one. Maybe that's in free
Yeah.
agency. Maybe it's with Tyler Warren or one of these other tight ends in the draft. But um, he's a great guy to have in the locker room. You're right. Another big one. Morgan Moses.
You got to keep him. You can't let him out of the building. I mean, to have five offensive line spots locked down at this time, it's just so unfamiliar for being a Jet fan. He is a warrior. He battles through adversity. He battles through injuries. He plays for the guy next to him. That's a guy you need in your building.
Yeah, when you look at the other tackles that are out there, there's not a bunch. Even in the draft, I wouldn't call this the deepest, or I guess the most top-heavy tackle draft. Um, I'm with you. If we can get him back, that would be great. But he's getting older. He might want to look for a contender or something like that. So we'll see how
Yeah.
that goes. Next on my list, Solomon Thomas.
Stay. Solid rotational guy. He's a perennial Walter Payton Man of the Year, so he's obviously a good guy. Seems like a good teammate. Not going to be a lot of money. I say keep him.
This is where we disagree. I say go. I'm ready for like the Sala people to get out the door. I'm a go on Solomon Thomas, even though I love him. He's a great guy. Um, Ashton Davis.
Ooh, this is a tough one. This is a tough one. As a rotational safety, I think just generally the Jets need to completely revamp their safeties room. I don't think he's like a bad number three or even number four option. He always seems to have a nose for the ball somehow. So I say keep him. Stay.
Okay. Ashton Davis is staying. Isaiah Oliver.
Stay. Positional versatility. I remember there was a story last year that he stepped in. He's a safety, but he stepped in as a nickel corner when Michael Carter got injured in pregame warmups, and he played really well. I think he's kind of a chess piece you can move around the secondary. I would keep him.
Okay. I am probably a no on Ashton, but a yes on Isaiah. We'll see how that goes, though. Let's stick with the safeties. Chuck Clark.
Go. He looked like he lost a step.
Lost a step, getting a little bit older, coming off the ACL. Not great. Um, Sticking with the safeties again. Jalen Mills.
Go. He was bouncing around practice squads. He had a couple decent games. I think the safety position was just so bare that it looked like he popped. He's a guy. I think he can go.
That one I don't have big feelings on. It's like if he's our fourth safety, then whatever. But yeah. Let me see if there's any others that really stand out. Oh, big one. Jamie Sherwood.
Jamie Sherwood, I want to keep him. Homegrown guy, fifth round pick, I think. Converted safety, I think.
Yep.
So good story. I think I want him to stick around, but I think there's going to be a lot of competition.
That's a really big one. Like, can't be letting these guys who he was our team MVP last year. Can't be letting these guys who are actually homegrown out the door like that. He's going to have a lot of competition. It sounds like he's going to be getting a lot of money, so we'll see if we're willing to pay up. But he's a really interesting one. I'm trying to see if there's anyone else on this list that really stands out. How about Tony Adams? He's a restricted free agent, meaning we basically have first rights on him. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't get too fired up about this one. I think he can go. I mean, I feels like the whole thing with Woody saying he needed to be benched, it just seems like there's something weird going on with him. So, I don't think. I mean, he had a couple of good moments, like the interception off Jalen Hurts when they played the Eagles last year, when the first year Aaron Rodgers got injured. But I haven't seen a whole lot from him.
All right, next one we've got here. Actually, that's probably it. The only other people that we have on here are like Lecky Fotu, which are probably a go. Tyron Smith we know is a go.
Yep.
Kendall Sheffield, Bruce Hector, Jamin Davis, like all folks that are like bottom of the roster type players. Um,
Yeah.
there is that kick returner, Kine Nguanu, who like had one kick return for a touchdown, and then we never saw he like got hurt. We never saw him again. So he'd be an interesting one. But otherwise, that's
Yeah.
pretty much it for our free agents. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's going to be an interesting free agency. We can get into it more. I don't think the Jets are going to be big players. It's not a great free agency class. You don't want to be the team that's handing out top of market contracts at 12:01 on Monday. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But let's take a pause right now. Take our breath. Let's do a gym break. For those of you that don't know what a gym break is, I'm a Jets, Islanders, Mets fan, and we throw the Knicks in there too. It's a silent K at the end, I guess. And I got a couple things I want to talk about with some of the other teams or that are in the New York area that are either doing well or not doing well. Start with the Knicks. Knicks had a great game. I think it was early last week against the Heat. Came back and won, and then we find out Jalen Brunson's out for 2 weeks. So once again, the injury bug strikes the Knicks. I don't know if they're contenders or not. Jalen Brunson is MVP caliber player, so we'll see what happens there. My second one and more important one is the New York Islanders. New York Islanders sell Brock Nelson at the deadline, trade him to the Avalanche. Brock was an amazing Islander. Everybody loves him. We got a good haul back for him. But the problem is we didn't trade away Kyle Palmieri or JG Pageau, which means we didn't go all in on what our strategy is. And this is something that the Jets have been so bad at, where we take half measures all the time. Like, are we shooting to tank or are we shooting to win? And we're always like in the middle. We're like, oh, 2015, Fitz did really well. Let's like try again with that same exact group. That's what it feels like with the New York Islanders right now. And it's really frustrating. So yeah, I guess we're re-signing Kyle Palmieri, a 35-year-old center or whatever. So we'll see how that goes. But he's pride of Long Island, so we do like him for that. Another thing I want to tell you, Matt, I saw your brother at the Islanders-Rangers game a few weeks ago. I'm walking around wearing my Cal Clutterbuck jersey because he's my favorite player because we're very similar. And he's doing like his between intermission like chat or whatever media stuff. And he's got a Sharpie, so I walk up to him. Cal Clutterbuck signs my jersey and takes a picture of me. He's like the nicest guy in the world. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was great. So it was cool I got to meet Cal, but the Islanders stink, so it's sad. But they won last night, so that was kind of cool. All right, with that concludes our gym break. Let's get into real free agency with our external free agents. So for those of you that don't know, at 12 o'clock on Monday, it is the legal tampering period in the NFL. That means that agents and free agents and teams can start talking about who they're going to sign, and then come Wednesday I think it's at 4 or is that noon? Wednesday at 4?
I think it's 4.
Wednesday at 4, the official league year starts. We are back. Happy New Year, and we'll hear all the official signings then. But really, everything starts tomorrow. So with that, Matt, I'm going to go through some of these positions and just give me your thoughts on where you think the Jets should go. Should they not do anything? And yeah, we'll go from there. So number one, we'll start with the most important position in all of sports. We'll start with the quarterbacks. There are a bunch of interesting quarterback names out there right now. You got Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, potentially Kirk Cousins getting cut, Marcus Mariota, Carson Wentz, Jameis Winston, and then a bunch of randos, even Russell Wilson, Cooper Rush, folks like that. So where are you sitting in terms of what the Jets should do at quarterback?
So there's been a lot of smoke recently about Justin Fields. And I think when I first heard it, I was not a fan. But then I started to think about it, and I'm actually very open to the idea of bringing Justin Fields in on a 2-year contract with, call it 220, mostly guaranteed. I think we've seen this story play out in the NFL a lot over the last couple of years. Highly drafted quarterback, flames out on the drafted team, bounces around the league, and then kind of has a career resurgence. It's mostly former Jet quarterbacks. I'm waiting for Zach Wilson to break out in 3 years for some team and lead them to the playoffs. But you look at a guy like Geno Smith, you look at a guy like Sam Darnold, you look at a guy like Baker Mayfield. They've all kind of bounced around and then they found a home. I think Justin Fields can be that for us. He looked a lot better on the Steelers last year, more so than he did at any point on the Bears. I think there's a really good coaching staff in place right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The offensive coordinator is inexperienced on the NFL level. However, I think there's a really good support staff. I think he fits in with the culture and the vision of the team. And I think I would be more than okay with Justin Fields. It brings a little bit of upside. He's got the mobility. I think he's made some good strides in terms of pocket presence, especially with the Steelers. He had them at a 4-2 record before he got benched. Look, and I think it really shows, what they want to do in the draft. So if you bring in a guy like Justin Fields, I don't think you need to worry about trying to take Jackson Dart at number 7, and you can just build out the team. So I'm very open to Justin Fields. I would also be very interested in if a guy like Kirk Cousins gets let go, bring him in. I don't think that's very likely at all, given that it was very publicized that he spurned the Jets when he went to Minnesota, when he signed that 3-year, $90 million deal back in 2018 or 2017. I don't think it's very likely. And let's be clear, he had a really down year at the end of last year. They brought in Penix, they put him in. He looked really bad. Apparently he was playing through an injury. He's an older guy. He's 36, 37, also coming off an Achilles. But I do think he'd be really interesting. If you bring in Kirk Cousins, you would probably have to draft a guy in the first or second round. But if you bring in Justin Fields, you have Tyrod, maybe draft a guy like Kyle McCord later in the rounds. And then Jordan Travis, I don't think he's ever going to take a meaningful snap with the Jets. So I think you have a pretty good quarterback room there. So I would love to bring in Justin Fields. I think he's a really interesting name.
Did you see the Jordan Travis comments he made saying that, or I think it was his agent, that the Jets rushed him back, which hurt him more?
Yeah, obviously, when you have Aaron Rodgers under center, you need to bench him to get Jordan Travis in. It just didn't make any sense.
We needed him ready. Come on, it's ridiculous. I bet what really happened is Aaron Glenn sat him down and been like, "Look, your roster spot is in jeopardy," and he freaked out. That's probably what happened.
Definitely.
Love the strategy though. I feel like if Justin Fields, he's got 2 options. It seems like right now, based on all the things we're hearing. And just for context, me and Matt are very active on Jets Twitter. Active meaning we're watching it 24/7. We're not always tweeting and things like that. But what we're hearing is that Justin Fields either is going to re-sign with the Steelers, which means Russell Wilson's leaving, or he's going to hit free agency, and the Jets seem like the most interested team. I'm sure there are other teams waiting in the wings too, which makes me nervous because I think he's the best option as well right now. But let's be clear, he's not a great quarterback. He improved a lot, and I think there's an upward trajectory. But when I look at free agency, I want people who are ascending, and he feels like he's getting better and improving. And he'd be exciting. We're going to run the heck out of the ball next year with Brees, a solidified offensive line. So I would feel pretty good with Justin Fields. I don't know if that means we're going to win 7 to 8 games. I'm not sure, but I think it's a good option. For me, I don't love the Kirk Cousins move. Just because, he did spurn us back in the day where he got all that money from Minnesota and used us. But also he can't move anymore. So for me, if I can't get Justin Fields, I'm going for entertainment value purely as my next quarterback. Give me Jameis Winston slinging for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions a game. That is fun football. And he's just a hilarious guy. So those are my options. I'm going Justin Fields, Jameis Winston. And please, I really don't want to trade up in the draft for a Cam Ward or anything like that. So we've got to find somebody for now to hold the fort.
I agree. Yeah, I don't want to trade up either.
Cool. All right, so that's our quarterback plan. Do you have anything on running backs, anything like that? For me, I left them out because we've got a pretty good stable of backs.
Yeah, I like the core we have. I was kind of scratching my head when they drafted running backs in back-to-back rounds last year, but it seems like it worked out for them.
Yeah, I'm hoping we see more out of Braylon Allen this year because he had a great game against the Titans, and then we never saw him again, which was so weird. Um, so hopefully he can be the David Montgomery to, what Brees could be, where he's a little bit bigger than those Lions backs, but like a Jahmyr Gibbs. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All I know is we're running the ball. That's for sure. All right, let's hop over to wide receiver. So T. Higgins gets the franchise tag, so we don't have to worry about him. But you've got guys out there like Chris Godwin, Darius Slayton, Josh Palmer, De'Ami Brown, Demarcus Robinson, Tim Patrick, Stefon Diggs, Keenan Allen. Where are you going from a wide receiver perspective?
So, Kevin, you mentioned earlier in the episode that the wide receiver room is looking pretty bare. And
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think you need to come away with two guys at a minimum. So, I think the way you want to build this room, first off, I think Tim Patrick could be a good option. He knows the offense. He's been in Detroit. He's been in Denver with Muji. He knows the Detroit offense. He seems like a locker room leader guy. He's not going to light up and be 1,000+ yard receiver, but I think he'll be a solid complementary option. So I think bring him in. He's not going to be a ton of money. I think he's a good complement. It'll really help with kind of the culture and setting the vision. So I think he's a guy that you want to come away with. Um, Now, in terms of someone with a little bit more upside, I would love to see De'Ami Brown come in. I thought he came really, really on with the Commanders last year, especially in the playoffs. He had that catch where he couldn't even see the ball. That was unbelievable. Um, Bring him in. I would love to see them go after Josh Palmer, another younger guy, ascending talent, has a little bit more kind of vertical speed. I think they would be really good complements to Garrett. And honestly, while we're talking about the wide receiver room, I know the Jets don't do this, but you got to extend Garrett Wilson. You got to keep him happy. I want him to have a big contract. I want him going into the season feeling really good. I see the downside of it. I see where, Glenn doesn't know him. They don't know how he's going to play. They're trying to build a culture and they're not trying to pay guys too early. But I think, it's shown that Garrett can play in under any system. He can play with any quarterback and always show up and perform. So I want to see him get extended as well.
Garrett has played with the worst quarterbacks in NFL history and somehow has 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. It's insane. So I agree with you on that one. That would make Muji, if you want to make something happen where the fans are going to love you forever, extend Garrett Wilson. That's it. I'm a little surprised you said De'Ami Brown. He's my number one target too. The thing was at Aaron Glenn's combine press conference, the big thing he talked about was speed. And he's got a ton of speed. And like you said, ascending, young, I think he'd be one I'm excited about. Tim Patrick seems like the lock of the century. I can't see him going anywhere else besides being our fourth wide receiver. So he's a little bit on the older side. I think he's 31 at this point, but has been through so many injuries, but he stayed healthy last year. So those will be interesting, but I think we'll also have to draft one or two players because can Malachi Corley do anything this year? That'll be interesting. I don't think Xavier Gibson is like a real NFL wide receiver. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're in trouble there. And I'm assuming we're acting as if we're cutting Alan Lazard in this case.
Yeah, he can go and he can take a soccer ball with him.
Alan Lazard no longer. I think by Wednesday at 4 o'clock he'll be cut. All right, cool. So that was the wide receivers. Anything on? Maybe let's do tackles. If we don't get Morgan Moses, which I know is your, you want to keep him, you want to extend him. Who are you looking at for offensive tackles?
Look, I think there's obvious connections with Dan Skipper, just being from the Lions. So I think that could be interesting. But if we don't get Morgan Moses back, someone I want to see them take a shot on would be Jedrick Wills. He was a highly drafted guy. I think he played left tackle for the Browns. He was benched, a little bit of a disappointment, but in college, I think he played right tackle. So I would want to bring him in and see what he can do.
25 years old, same thing, young, ascending. I'm surprised you didn't say you wanted Mekhi Becton back, Kelvin Beachum, any of the George Fant. They're all out there.
Yeah, bring the band back together.
Bring the band back together. I love it. I love the. I'm a big fan of. Well, Dan Skipper. It seems like he would just be a sixth tackle anyway. I feel like we can get a starter and bring in Dan Skipper, and then Jedrick Wills is a really good choice. I like it a lot. All right. Anything on the interior offensive line? I don't have a lot there, but what do you think?
No, not much. I think we have both tackles locked down. John Simpson, MVP of Jets Twitter, by the way. Like, make this man a Jet for life. Like, just an awesome, awesome guy. I really do believe in the combo of John Simpson and AVT. So if they brought anyone in, it would probably be just kind of a depth guy.
Yeah, agreed. I think we're going for depth, and you like what Joe Tipman has done so far too. So stay young,
Absolutely.
stay young on the interior. All right, cool. Let's go to the defensive line. And we'll start with D tackles because man, we are once again barren. Joe Douglas tore apart this defensive line somehow. We got Quinnen Williams, who's obviously probably a top two player on the team. What are we doing? Because we were horrible against the run last year.
We need to do a lot. We need to do a lot. The top two guys I think are Milton Williams and Jonathan Allen on the interior defensive line. I think Milton Williams is interesting, but I think he's going to get a massive contract. Like he
Yep.
might get the biggest contract of free agency at any position. So I think we'll probably stay out of that. I would really like to see Jonathan Allen come in. I think that would be a really, really interesting thing. But again, the money just has to be right. I think I'm looking for kind of more role player guys, more guys that can stuff up the interior. So the guys that I were looking at were I'm going to butcher his last name, but Levi on Wazuriki, Lions, Lions guy, knows Glenn really well. Just a big guy, can just soak up those blocks in the middle, kind of free Quinnen up to kind of do his thing. I mean, look, Quinnen's still amazing. He needs more help. That's really all it is. He's getting double teamed on every play. I don't think you need to bring in a big money, big name guy because you have Quinnen. You need to get the role player guys that are going to get in there, put their face mask right up in there and, just perform. So Levi and Wazuriki, Jaron Reed, Puna Ford, DJ Jones, like those are all guys that I want to go after. And I think you need to come away with two of them, to be honest. And look, if the money's right, I would love to have Jonathan Allen on this team as well.
Yeah, Jonathan Allen's tough because are you going to have two $20+ million a year D tackles? That's going to be the interesting part. He would be awesome. I just don't see us paying for him that much money. I love Puna Ford. He's like
Mm-hmm.
315 pounds and just eats up running backs in the middle. And I feel like that's what we need because I feel like Quinnen's become more of like a pass rushing defensive tackle at this point.
Yeah.
So we need that big body to just eat up blockers. So I love Puna Ford. Another big dude is BJ Hill from the Bengals. I think he's another one who's like 310 or something like that. But the other thing too is this draft is really great for defensive tackle depth. So I feel like you're coming away with one or two in free agency, you're coming away with one or two in the draft, and you have a whole new unit at that point. So, and it'll be interesting too if we re-sign any of those folks, like you mentioned Solomon Thomas earlier. We'll see what that means for the team. So I love the options there, and I love the Lions connection with Levi. Let's go to let's do edge, D end edge, whatever you want to call it. So
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, look, I think I almost view Jermaine Johnson coming back as like something new because he got injured so early in the year, and I thought he was just going to take off. I think Will McDonald made really good strides, so I think you have kind of the two guys on the edge, and I don't think they're going to make big money or sign a big money guy in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
I think you kind of have your bookend ends, but yeah, I don't think that's a high priority for the team. But I would be interested to hear your opinion.
Yeah, the thing I worry about is that Jermaine Johnson's coming back from the injury, and it's a tough injury to come back from. So it might be a slow start for him. So we need some depth behind him while that gets going. Uh, I was looking around. There's not a lot of like names that are like really jumping out to me. There's Derek Barnett from the Eagles, which we were always tied to when we had Joe Douglas. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Hilarious story about Derek Barnett. I went to the NFL draft in Philadelphia. Eagles were on the clock. They draft Derek Barnett in the first round. All of Philadelphia is pissed. They are so angry. 12 months later, he has a critical sack fumble in the Super Bowl against the Patriots for them to win. So I've always just laughed about Derek Barnett and his relationship with the Eagles fans. So he's one option that I'm looking at. Um, there's a lot of older guys. That's the problem. Like Josh Sweat's going to make the big money. You got Khalil Mack, who's probably going back to the Chargers, I guess. Joey Bosa just got cut. Harold Landry's another older name. All these folks are like 29 plus in terms of age. So, like Chase Young is probably the youngest out there, but he has not been good at all. So, uh,
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting. I don't know if we're going to find somebody besides depth in this free agent class. So maybe it's a place where we actually hold back on spending money. All right, cool. Let's go to linebacker because obviously we talked about Jamie and Sherwood as someone we want to bring back. But is there anyone else out there that maybe if we don't get Jamie and Sherwood, what do we do?
I think Dre Greenlaw is a really interesting name. He knows Wilkes well, super athletic guy, had that really unfortunate injury in the Super Bowl. And I know he's battled some injuries, but I think it would be really interesting to bring him in if we don't keep Jamie in.
Yeah, he would be an interesting one, especially coming back from that injury. He's 28 years old. Um, so yeah, this will probably be like he'll be back to normal this season, which would be great. So he's a really interesting one. I was looking at some of the younger guys, like Nick Bolton from the Chiefs is only 24. I'm surprised the Chiefs are letting him walk. I think that's an interesting one. Another one that's kind of a lock of the century. He's kind of like a linebacker, but edge. Marcus Davenport, who played for the Saints under Glenn and for the Lions under Glenn. It just feels like he's going to follow. So that'll be an interesting one too. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's mostly older guys. Like Zach Bond is the one who just got paid by the Eagles. Bobby Wagner just got paid. Levante David went back to his team. So not a lot of great folks out there. That's why I feel like you got to pour money into Jamian.
I would have been all over Bobby Wagner if he hit the market. You
Yeah.
know, veteran guy, leader, went to the Commanders, and they immediately, not because of him necessarily, but immediately, they had a really good season, especially on defense. I would have loved Bobby Wagner.
Culture changer. That's a winner. Love that guy.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to cornerback. So there are a couple options out there. So I guess the idea is, are we spending money on corner because we obviously have Sauce Gardner, who we're gonna have to pay big money to eventually, and I am pro extending Sauce Gardner. But who else are we looking at to maybe be our corner two?
I would love to see Carlton Davis come in.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be expensive though.
Yeah,
I really do. Because it's like, okay, if you pay Carlton Davis 10 million a year and DJ Reed's going to get 12, like why not just keep DJ Reed?
yeah,
You know. So I don't know. I would love to see Carlton Davis come in though, but it just seems like DJ Reed just wants a fresh start, and I can't blame him honestly.
yep.
Um, but I think Carlton Davis has, like I said, it's the familiarity from Detroit. He knows the system, and he was good. I think he was on the Buccaneers. He was good. He was good. He was good in Detroit. I want to see him come and kind of be the complement to Sauce. But kind of like I said, I want to see what Brandon Eccles and Stiggers can do. I know they play a press heavy system, and you can't necessarily rely on those guys because they're younger guys that haven't been starters before. But I think that they can carve out a role for themselves. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to be spending big money on cornerbacks, but if they do, I'd love to see them go after Carlton Davis.
Yeah, that seems like to be. Seems like he's the name that everyone's talking about. But like you said, I also think he's going to be expensive. I love Qantas Stiggers. I just love his story. I feel like he can't not be successful, but is he going to be our corner two? No. But the other problem is you've already paid Michael Carter as well, so we've got expensive cornerback room right now.
Hmm.
But there is one guy that I'm really interested in. It's Paulson Adebo from the Saints. He broke his femur this past year, which was obviously a devastating injury, but obviously you watch all those videos of people working out and coming back from it. He'd be a really interesting one. I'm curious how much he's going to cost. I think he's only 25 or something like that.
Yeah, 25 years old.
Yeah, so I think he'd be a really interesting one. Um, I think Byron Murphy's interesting. He might just go back to the Vikings because he was really good in that system. But he's another one I'm looking out for. Okay, so that's the cornerbacks. Now probably to one of my favorite positions. And this will be the last one. Safety. Lots of great safeties out there in the free agent market. I've got my opinions, but Matt, what do you got?
I think that you need to come away with two safeties from this free agent class. And there's a couple guys that I have my eye on. First one, Talanoa Hufanga. I think he is a very, very interesting guy. Again, you got that 49ers connection with Steve Wilkes. He's a young guy. I think he's had some injuries. But when he was on the field, he showed a lot of versatility. Dynamic player on the back end. So he's a guy I have my eye on. I also want to take a look at Trayvon Moehrig and Jeremy Chin. I think it's all about flexibility and versatility. You see how they use Kirby Joseph, for Detroit under Aaron Glenn. I don't think any of those guys are that caliber, but I think how they use him shows kind of the qualities that they want in a safety. And I think those are some interesting guys. Another guy too that I didn't realize was going to be in free agency that we've been talking about for seemingly forever, older guy, but Justin Simmons. He's going to be a free agent. I feel like we talked about him joining the Jets forever. So maybe take a look at him. Kind of, he's more of like the deep center fielder type of guy. But those are some of the guys that I have my eye on.
Yeah, I think safeties overall don't cost a lot, so this is a place I think we can spend money this offseason. I mean, obviously there's the big name guys. There's Javon Holland. There's Cameron Bynum. I don't think we're going to be in market for those. The three guys
Yeah,
you listed are also my top three. Hafunga would be so fun. And he's coming off an injury from 2 years ago. He didn't look like himself, but he played under Steve Wilkes and he played great under Wilkes. So I'm all in on him. When I see him, it's just Troy Polamalu as it's a spitting image of him. So
it's a
I
fun
would.
name to say too. Hafunga.
Oh, that's a no doubt jersey purchase. Hafunga. Um, Morrig would be great. He's just an Aaron Glenn type. You could just feel it. Like he hits really hard, which is really fun to watch. Uh, so I love that one. So this will be interesting. But I'm all in on those young guys that you talked about. So that is it. My last piece. Who do you want to be the kicker? Well, I guess do you want Greg the leg back? That's the first question.
No,
Cut him.
no. I would cut him. Look, Anders Carlson had some interesting games. Let's see what he can do. Bring him in. Bring some competition in. Don't anoint him to be the starter, but I think he has some upside. He made some big kicks. Bring him in and bring another guy in, or maybe even draft a guy and just create some competition in that position.
My thing is like, let's stop getting this wrong. Can we just get a kicker that can be stable? Like that's all we
Yeah.
want. All right, Matt. Well, that was awesome. I think we just fixed the entire New York Jets, Super Bowl champions next year. So I love it. Thank you for coming on and doing this. My final thing before we part is to answer the trivia question that we had. So I'm curious if you know the answer. But the question was, what NFC team did the Jets beat on the road in 2022? Matt,
Packers.
the Packers. For those of you that don't know, me and Matt took a trip out to Green Bay. Lambeau Field was amazing. It was probably one of the greatest trips I ever went on. And we just
100%.
shellacked Aaron Rodgers and that. Well, he had a nice touchdown pass to Alan Lazard in that game, which is actually
He did,
hilarious.
yeah.
But we had a block punt for a touchdown. Brees Hall had a huge run on like a broken play. It was an insane game. We won 27-10, and Sauce put the cheese head on the top of his head at the end of the game when he was running around.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was such a fun game. And actually, I didn't tell you this. Just purchased my tickets to the NFL draft, so I'm going back to Green Bay in a little over a month.
Wow.
So very excited to be back in Green Bay. We'll see how they do it with the draft because for those of you that don't know, it is a small town in the middle of nowhere, and all there is Packers football. It's all they care about. So Matt, I don't know if you have any thoughts on Green Bay as a whole.
Green Bay was amazing. I don't think I'll ever miss a Jets game in Green Bay ever again. It was just so about football. The fans were incredible. We were just squarely in enemy territory, and we had a blast with everybody. There were people behind us razzing us for a little bit, but they loved it. We loved it. We had a great time. Always helps when you win, but just the whole scene after the game, everyone's just out, and there's just bars up and down, lining around the stadium. It's just an amazing place, honestly. We had a blast.
Yeah, it's like every football fan's dream vacation, I guess. And it was hilarious. Like you're walking around and we just beat your team pretty badly, and your Aaron Rodgers era is coming to an end. And people are like, "Oh, did you have a great time? Are you having fun?" I'm like, I would never be that kind to you if you were an opposing fan in my stadium.
Yeah, people were coming up to us and saying, "Wow, we're so happy that you guys came out and saw your team win." Like, could you imagine that happening in Philadelphia? I don't think so.
No way. Well, Matt, this was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on, being my first guest on the Juicy Jet podcast.
I'm
Um,
honored.
yeah, it was great having you here. For those of you listening, if you're on video, if you can subscribe, like on YouTube, If you can rate, review, all that good stuff across all the listening platforms, Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. Um, Matt, I don't know if you have any socials that you want to share as well, if people want to follow you, but for me, like it's JuicyJet25 on TikTok, it's Kevin Rooney25 on Twitter, but Matt, you can feel free to throw in if you want.
All you need is Juicy Jet, baby.
Love it. All right, cool. Well, Matt, thank you so much. Hopefully, we get back on in 2 or 3 days, and the Jets have some big signings, and including a new quarterback to start off this 2025 year. So, thanks again, everybody, for listening, and we'll talk to you all soon.